If a process only hits one department, the likelihood of it failing is very high. I have a friend who runs a $60 million business and wasn't paying payroll taxes. And that is a you can go to prison offense. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I don't think I'm ready for an HR person. I'm like, bro.
We're about 8 months into using Avoca, and Avoca's been an awesome partner for us in our call center. So what Avoca does for us is they do two different things. One, they have their Coach product, and Coach has been helping us do what it says. Coach our CSRs every single day. It listens to every call and uses AI technology to basically pick apart that call and tell us where we can improve. And for the last 8 months, we've been consistently improving our scores, which has been awesome. The other product they have is just conventional booking. And it's an AI tool that books over the phone. A customer calls in and it either handles overflow, as in our phones are full, or it does nights and weekends for us. And a customer will call in and actually deal with an AI agent all the way through booking. And the savings inside call center has allowed us to ramp up our marketing to continue to grow even more. Thank you, Avoca, and thank you, Tyson, for your partnership.
Welcome back to Owned and Operated with your host, Jack, the Maniac Carr, and John Wilson.
I really feel like you're living... We talk about it every time, but
I just like having a microphone.
I think you're a white dude with a mic, which,
it's 100%.
Yeah, 100%. And on top of that, I think you missed like this calling to professional wrestling. I think that's what you wanted to do in life.
I did watch a lot of WWF as a kid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mostly, I think it's voice acting. I think I have a great voice for voice acting.
Wow. Okay. Humble brag
Not
much?
Not that anyone has told me that ever in my entire life. Not a single person.
I just personally love the sound of my own voice.
I think that my voice would fit really well on a cartoon character. That's it.
My God.
Like that's the extent of it. Sweet, man. So awesome. I'm really excited to riff today because I got a text message right before we started. And this is how prepared and ready we are, guys, for all of these episodes. Is one of my managers, I told him to run a report because we're supposed to be running this specific report in Service Titan every week. And he said, hey, Jack, that report that you told me to run, we have $9,000 in uncollected completed jobs that are falling through the cracks. If I didn't run this report, we wouldn't know about it and you'd be screwed. So I think today I just wanted to touch base, John, on like processes in place on the back end of like financial procedures, if that even logically makes sense.
Yeah.
To make sure that you're getting paid and you're not getting screwed in every corner, because I feel like as you grow, like that's the last thing to grow. You don't grow your finance processes on how to make sure you collect first. You just grow and then you go, oh shit, I'm missing money. Let's put a process in place. And that's where we have been. And we put the process in place. But then what ends up happening is like, who's going to hold it accountable? Because there's only 16 of us.
Yeah.
And we're all wearing 10 hats each. We're all generalists still trying to become specialists.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the first one to start, I think, is collection, like making sure you collect. And I know people on here are going, what the hell is Jack talking about? Like just collect the money on site. Yes, for most things. But I think that there's a crack, and that specific crack in our business is this junction between, especially as we took on plumbing, like with HVAC, you do the job, you finish the job, you get paid. With plumbing, sometimes there's this kind of waterfall of you do the job, you do the rough-in, and then there's a 3-week period before the trim out. And then the customer doesn't know to call you back, or something happens and they go with a different plumber for the trim out. And now you have a job where you still did the rough-in, you're still owed that money. Maybe you took a deposit, but there's still thousands of dollars on the line that has been, it's technically not closed out, and it's not an AR because the job's not finished. And so it's in like no man's land. I don't know if there's an answer to that.
Well,
what's the process?
I think there is. And I think I want to give like the tactical for this specific issue, but I also think we should talk like higher level, because this is more, I think it's enterprise-wide philosophy of, hey, I'm going to make this process, then what happens? And or at least the way I think of it is who's watching the watcher. So if I'm putting like that same issue that you just described, which again, we can talk about the tactical of how you solve that with your frontline managers, but that same issue could be any issue. So it could be like, hey, we require background checks during the hiring process, and maybe one day your HR person decides they don't want to do background checks anymore, or they forget, and then it just falls off. And then you find out a year later, oh, whoops. Or keeping control of cash in accounting, marketing budgets. I mean, it's almost like who owns the process and then who watches who owns the process. I think like that's the thing I think we can try to solve here today. And the only reason I don't think we're masters at it, I think we're farther along. And the only reason we're farther along is because we have made so many mistakes that are exactly like what you just described. And we've had to figure out how to resolve it.
Let's just make sure though that we do get tactical, because this is an open problem.
I think we start with tactical.
Yeah.
So this used to happen a ton. And it still does happen. So it's not that it doesn't happen. It's just that we now have a process to catch it. So every month every month as a part of our end of month process in operations and then held accountable by accounting, we have a uncompleted jobs report. It's exactly what you just described. It's like, hey, here's the jobs. And like, it could be what you're describing where it's like the job was complete, but we didn't go back, we didn't collect, whatever. It also could be somebody made a mistake. So like what we found a ton, and it used to be like 50 grand a month of revenue that like, oh, I forgot to clock out that day. And then dispatch clocked me out. But then when they clocked me out, the invoice didn't complete. So it says like 3 of 4 completed. So I have an open $9,000 job that just was never completed, which means we didn't collect because it was on financing and we didn't go through the process there. So it was 50 grand a month for us.
The other one that we notice a lot is, so those are 2 definite scenarios. The other one is that the job from a CSR perspective wasn't booked through the estimate.
Yeah.
So the $0 ticket that was created, the $0 job was closed out, but the open estimate that was sold is sitting in an open estimates report, not completed, even though we've completed it. So that's another one that we found.
Yeah.
And so our process actually is the same as yours. It sounds like it's just the follow-up. We run that weekly.
Yeah.
The managers are supposed to run that weekly, and yours truly is supposed to follow up on that weekly with them to make sure that they're running.
That's how ours works. So it's now, ours is now a 3-step process. It's the install coordination team is accountable for keeping jobs closed and running it weekly. The director of fulfillment is accountable for checking in on it monthly so that we can close out the month accurately. And then accounting is accountable for following up with the director of fulfillment to make sure that that gets done in a timely manner. So it's checks and balances is probably the best way to think about it. Because what we have found just like on repeat, and I'll give some other examples outside of just this, but we found on repeat is like, you have to create, if a process only hits one department, the likelihood of it failing is very high.
Yeah. And that's what I'm learning is the one department followed up by me, not a good plan. It's not a good plan. I mean, even if I'm considering even bringing on, I know you used to do it a long time ago for different scenarios. But even like overseas talent to just ensure processes were completed. Like, hey, your job is just as a follow-up person, as Jack's VA that does direct follow-up on, hey, this process is supposed to be done. Did we go through and ensure that the report for Ferguson is correct? Like, did you do that? Did the manager do that? No. Well, that's someone that's a second department, which is going to be like quality assurance of processes is complete. Just because, when I'm wearing all these hats, it's so difficult to maintain and track. Like, hey, did you do what I asked you to do weekly type of deal?
I think there's a term for this. I don't remember the name for it, but our controller uses it, and it's something like triple confirmation. It's mainly used in purchasing, or maybe it's like 3-tag or something like that. But there's 3 different tags, and this is like if I'm going to go buy a part. And one of the big issues that we have in our industry, and us specifically, is we have low dollar, like average ticket is like $3,000, low dollar, but high velocity of POs. So like so I might buy from vendors 100 different POs a day, which for a $30 million company, that's a lot of POs. That's a ton of transaction volume. And they're all small POs. So like the POs might be like $10, $15, $20. Then there's a few $1,000 ones mixed in there, but it's a ton of volume of small dollars. So what inevitably happens is you run into the same scenario where, hey, this vendor billed me, and like, I don't even think I got these parts, or like, oh, I agreed on this pricing for this part, but they billed me 30% more than that. Like, what the heck just happened? Or, hey, they sent it, but I only got half the order. What happened to the other order? I'm being billed for the whole thing. Like, any variation of those could happen. So we put in a triple tag system where we have to, before we pay an invoice, we're going to check the PO, we're going to check our PO confirmation, we're going to check our receive tag. Like, did everything happen the way that we thought it was going to happen? So we've taken a similar philosophy, or are in the midst of taking a similar philosophy with most of the other parts of our business. One area that this shows up in a ton, which like frankly scares the heck out of me for companies that aren't prioritizing an HR or accounting hire, like a high level HR accounting hire, is it shows up like crazy in HR. Like, because
How so?
Well, it's back to like triple confirmation. So
just that the process is being followed. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
It shows up a lot that they're missing it.
HR owns the process. Then who's making sure that you paid your benefits on time, which by the way, you are personally legally liable for. They can take your house. Who's making sure you pay your 401k contributions for your team members? Who's making sure you put your medical in on time? You have a strict amount of time to do that. Who's making sure you pay your payroll taxes? Like, these are like, this isn't like small business stuff. Like, I have a friend who runs a $60 million business, and they found out that their HR director wasn't doing deductions properly and wasn't paying payroll taxes. And that is you can go to prison like offense. It's crazy.
I think the hard part around HR specifically too is like who around finance, right? Everybody's responsible for some level of purchasing, buying, selling, the whole revenue generation, collection. But in HR, there's no secondary person, right? There's no secondary function or person that really does a check and balance on the HR systems themselves. So who do you have? I want to two-part this question. Who do you have for that? What's your solve? And then I want you, obviously your business, this 3-touch, 3-tag system, it's more, there's more opportunity because you have more people, right?
Yes.
And so I don't want to shoot this over the heads of everybody under 5 million that's sitting here going.
So, because I'm involved in some of this. Like, this isn't like, I'll delegate it to wherever.
Well, no. I'm not saying it like that, because if you look at like Tommy's Mellows business, if he has the same thing, obviously he has more people who can do that, but there's also more systems. So there's more connections. And I'm not lost on that. What I'm trying to get to is, hey, I'm thinking for my businesses, I could do a 2-touch system, but a 3-touch system would still be extremely difficult just because I don't have the head count. Like, I don't know who the third person would be.
I'm going to give you an example.
Okay.
So let's do this unsold jobs. And you have a service manager, ops manager, something.
Yeah. Service manager.
Okay. And is there an ops manager, or you're the ops manager, right?
There is an ops manager too.
That the service manager directs to?
Correct.
Okay. So this is perfect. So like, titles are different, but that's my setup too. Now, granted, I have one more layer in between, but I don't think that matters. So
agreed.
Every Monday, I know you probably know this, but I'm going to go through it because I think this hits this. Every Monday from 12:30 to 3, I sit 30 minutes each. I sit down with each frontline leader by department. So plumbing has 2 frontline leaders, drains has 1, electric has 2, HVAC has 2, and restoration has 1. So I sit down with each leader of the frontline teams, and we go through their measurables. And their measurables can be financial, but it can also be qualitative. So like, hey, what was your gross margin month to date? We on track, off track? Do you have anybody that's struggling? Like, I am a $30 million business, and I am helping them identify and then holding them accountable every Monday to, hey, this guy is struggling. What are we doing coaching wise? How are we helping support them? Are we doing ride alongs? When was your last one-on-one? And then what we do from there. So that's 2-touch. And that's me like skip leveling. That's me multiple levels away from this manager on org structure. And then I inform their director of like, hey, this was the plan. Here's the to-do for this week. And now the director helps me hold them accountable to the plan that we set on Monday. So that's a 3-touch. There's 3 different people in there to help improve the performance of our field pros.
Yeah, that's interesting though, the way that you phrase that, because in my mind, I'm almost viewing that as you're creating 2 separate processes and then you're only 2-touching 2 separate things.
What do you mean?
This SOP is, or the issue, I guess, if you will, the opportunity is tech underperformance, if we're going to say.
Yeah.
The single touch is the manager knowing that he's tech underperforming.
Right. Is the manager watching, and has the manager set his own plan?
Correct. The second touch is you managing the manager, asking him those questions, but then you've created a kind of an auxiliary system where you've let the director or a different level of position know. But now, like, this whole kind of, in my mind, and this is, I could be completely wrong. I mean, I'm asking you, the expert, subject matter expert here, is a question. But how is that not kind of a side leg, in the sense that now you're single touching a process to a director level to now handle this? So you did complete the circuit in a 3rd touch, but by doing so, you created a single touch with the director level, because who says that the director level is doing that? Who says that he's going through that process? You should find out in a year that, hey, Joey hasn't had a follow-up conversation with the managers about that.
Well, so that's how we track it
ever.
So we track it in like public to-dos.
Okay. So
like
it
when I'm
becomes like
sitting
an
there with the
open
frontline
ledger.
leaders, it's like, hey, this is what you agreed to do this week. Like, you agreed to go on a ride along with this person, and then it goes into a public to do. So his boss and his peers can all see the to do that was agreed on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's an open ledger, essentially. That.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, because that was going to be my next question, is could you utilize systems and processes to actually be that 3rd touch, like automation systems or follow-up ledgers? And in this case, I would almost say that the 3rd touch is actually having,
and
that makes sense. A director owning that
job to hold them accountable to the plan that they said themselves they would do. So in your case, I'm going to play this out for you. So you have the same org structure I do. I have one more layer, doesn't matter. You've got the ops manager, and you have the frontline leaders that report to that ops manager. And then you're above that ops manager. So you'd have the same setup. So if I'm going to sit down every Monday, and I'm going to give an example that's non-tech performance. We have a spreadsheet called job issues, and job issues is typically like material list issues, or like, hey, this job went too long. So I think it's somewhat closer relates to the problem that you're going through right now. Did we close them out? So on Mondays, like we hit those job issues lists. Like, hey, these are the job issues. I'm not going to go over all 20 of them last week with you. Like, are you up to date on coaching? Did you review them? Did you do the thing? And then we put in the to-do, if there's any to-do from that, public ledger of here's the to-do. And then the director, they have their L10 on Wednesdays. So it's like, okay, did you make any progress between the meeting on Monday and today? If not, then I'll help move it along. But yeah, it is sort of like it's a public accountability, but it is put on by you.
Which is very interesting. That actually makes a lot of sense too, because that would solve a huge slough of the issues. A huge grouping of my issues is, hey, like, okay, so instead of, letting a manager know and then following up with them on these individuals on items on individual days, you do essentially one-on-ones where you have a list of kind of, here's our top issues or KPIs or processes that need to be followed. Are they being followed? And are you having any issues subsequently? Right.
Yeah. It also gets you in pulse with the organization. Now, this is my, we did this morning. We have like a leadership cohort on Wednesday morning. So Wednesdays are like the leadership days. So from 7 to 8, we do a leadership training with up and coming leaders. Like they're not leaders yet, but they're hoping to enter that leadership track. And then like Wednesday late morning, like 10, we do existing managers. We do like a training for them. So this morning, they from 7 to 8 in the upcoming leaders, they did a training on the 6 different styles of leadership. And I was like, hey, Brandon, what's my style of leadership? And he said like aristocratic or something. It's like, I have full and complete total control. Like, so what I'm saying, I understand that like some people might look at it and be like, oh, that's like you're skip leveling, like that's other people's jobs, that's whatever. And like 2 responses. 1, I don't care.
I knew that was coming. Number 1 is like, it's worse, a failing business. So I'll skip level
think
for
like,
a bit here.
I think that frontline obsession from the top of the org chart is more important than are we following the proper pecking order? Like it is irrelevant. So that's number 1 is like, I think the frontline obsession is more important than like ego of the org chart of, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. And 2, as long as accountability is still in the right spot, I'm good with it. And the accountability is created by creating a public ledger and holding the director accountable. And number 3, I think you can only lead as who you are, and this is who I am. So, yes, but I do think skip levels are good. And I think no matter what size of a business you are, having Chris Hoffman did a tweet like a year ago, and it honestly really like challenged us in a way that I think was good. And he said it roughly exactly this. And Chris runs $180 million business. And it was, hey, our entire leadership team has a frontline obsession. I know when individual techs are struggling, and I know what the plan is to solve that. And when I read that, this was like a year ago. I was like, I don't know that. And I don't know what the plan is to solve it. And because of that, I think I'm out of tune with the day-to-day organization, which I don't think is good. I think having a 30,000 foot view is good. I also think understanding the day-to-day issues is important, because otherwise you can't, like, my job is to like remove future bottlenecks. But if you don't know what the current bottlenecks are, how are you supposed to remove the future ones? And then you just, you pay intelligent people to solve the current ones, but you should know. So Chris's tweet in a business 6 times my size really challenged me to be like, if he knows it, I should know it. So we started making process changes around it, and it happened to solve some of these like 2-3 point touch SOP issues that we had. Field Pulse is the all-in-one field service management solution built specifically for field service teams. Field Pulse is designed to simplify your day-to-day operations by combining everything that you need into one platform. This includes multiple integrations with other softwares you might already use, like QuickBooks Online or Desktop. With advanced tools and features for scheduling and dispatching, CRM, estimates, invoices, project management, team communication, and a detailed reporting and insights, Field Pulse will transform the way that your team operates, saving you time and finding revenue potential you didn't even know existed. Whether you're a small business looking to grow or a larger company ready to scale, Field Pulse gives you the tools to increase productivity and keep everything running smoothly. And don't just take our word for it. Field Pulse has earned over 580 glowing reviews with an average of 4.8 stars. That's Field, P-U-L-S-E. Head to their website to learn more. That's fieldpulse.com. And because we know how impressed y'all are going to be, we got you guys an exclusive limited time offer. So make sure you mention Owned and Operated and get 15% off their annual plan with Field Pulse now. Check it out.
I think that's really helpful, because I do foresee like that being a great solving point, because this kind of reverberates throughout the entire business, right?
Yeah.
And specifically today, I mean, I'm talking just about like the financial in and out, and where do you find those heads, and where do you find the time and the bodies to maintain it. But it sounds like the bodies are already there, the processes are already there. It's just making sure from an accountability standpoint that even though I feel like I'm swamped and that shouldn't be on my to-do list that it does need to be, but if you created a system in place to manage, I'm always thinking like Monday.com, where you just have like all these SOPs
We
that
use
need to
90
be done.
for this. Like 90 is our EOS software. So the to-dos that we assign actually show up in their L10s. And we like that because then it's like, you're going to talk about this. John assigned it. Like, you're going to talk about this. And did you complete your to-do?
Yeah. And then here, let me ask one more follow-up question, which I think is a very important part of this, right? So there's the one part of it, for example, this specific instance I'm going to use because it's a great one. Running a report to see how much is falling through the cracks, and then you holding them accountable for that action and running that SOP. What if they're messing up, right?
Yeah.
So I'm running the report. He's missing, or Jack is the frontline manager. I'm running the report. Maybe my training's bad. Who knows? Maybe I'm lazy that day. Maybe I had too much to drink last night because I partied.
Nice.
And I just missed like a giant job that fell through. And then 6 months later, the customer calls in and it's like, hey, I was supposed to pay you guys for this, but like you guys never followed up.
Yeah.
So
I think,
I don't know if there's an answer, because like that's super hypothetical, but like how do you view that? Because there's an accountability, and then there's an assurance that the job is done correctly.
Yeah. I think this was my point with HR and accounting, is it feels like such a black box. You have to build these systems. But I would say that like it's easier to understand in HR because like you're not thinking about HR 24/7. Like we had somebody in HR a few months ago that literally missed our open enrollment. Like it was a clusterfuck. And fortunately we found it, but like we found it January 1st, and Anthem gave us a 30-day window, but like she was fired on the spot because that is insane. That's your only job, is to make, is to take care of our people. But I think as my take here, and then we can dive a little bit deeper, but from what I've seen and from what we have experienced, like how we have run our business, accountability of leadership hardly exists in smaller businesses. We all are too willing to hold our salespeople, installers, and techs highly accountable to measurement, but we will not give our managers the same respect. Like, so I will often see managers or senior leaders not held as accountable as they should be, and they run rampant, or they aren't effective in their role. But the problem is it's harder to measure, and it's over a longer stretch of time. Like a technician, like, hey, if you have 2 bad weeks, we're going to like talk and try to coach you and like help you. Like we want you to win. Manager or senior leaders might be measured in quarters or months. For like effectiveness. So it's harder to measure, and it's really hard to measure if you don't have a target. So, we've talked about budgeting, but like that same thing I do on Monday, I actually do on Thursday too. So I take 2.5 hours of my day, 2 days a week. And on Monday, it's for our frontline ops leaders. On Thursday, it's for our cost center leaders. And it's the same thing. Like, hey, accounting, this was your budget. Salary wise, this is what I expected to spend on COGS. This is where I expect my credit card to be, my AR, my AP. Like these are the rough metrics that I'm going to measure that you're doing a good job as the leader of my accounting department. Did you do a good job? Like, yes, no. And if you didn't, let's talk about it. Call center, we have a budgeted number of calls we need a week. Like it's not that complicated. If you have 8 techs, they all run 4 calls a day. You need 32 calls a day. So, we have that budget, and I meet with my call center manager, Lori, every Thursday for half an hour. And did we hit? Did we not? Who on your team is struggling? What are you doing to help support them? So we took the same lessons that we learned in the frontline ops leaders, and we took it to our cost centers because we were seeing the same problem of like, oh, there's low accountability over here. We need to set the target. So I need 150 calls a week for this department. And then I need to work with them weekly on, hey, did you hit what I expected out of your team? And if you didn't, what is your plan? And then great. Did you complete your plan? Was it successful? And that back line is where you start holding managers accountable and where jobs get at risk. Like, oh, you you didn't complete your plan, you didn't do what you said you were going to do, then what the fuck are you doing here? Like, why am I paying you money? Like, it's okay if we have problems, but if you commit to doing something and you either don't do it or you do it horribly, then like, what are we doing?
On those examples, let me ask you a question, because that I think those are really good examples to try and showcase what I'm asking here. And yes, right, holding them accountable, but the metric in particular, I mean, I'm guessing that's where the secret sauce is picking a metric that you, John, or your GM or your ops manager is able to measure effectively.
Yeah.
Because what I imagine, right? So for example, we had something similar in HR where somebody had quit, and I go in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months later, and they're still sitting we're still paying their benefits. And we have an SOP. We followed up with the individual and said, hey, this person was let go. Like, are they off the benefits? Yep, they're off. But realistically, they weren't. And so like the extra steps to ensure that the person is doing what they're supposed to be doing, it feels like I would have to go back behind everyone and do everyone in the entire company's individual job to get to that. So I would imagine that instead of you going back through, there is some level of like, hey, you're number 2, you're number 3, the managers are going back through, and then the managers are following up.
Yeah.
And the managers are following up, so that you don't have to get super intricate and down to the
ideally.
minute.
And like our plan, because I don't think we have it totally solved for HR or accounting. So our plan there is creating a who's watching the watchers. Like I have been burned enough by accounting and HR leaders making massive mistakes and me holding the bag. Like I'm good. It has happened a lot. So
there's
what we're doing,
much risk there. There's so much risk there.
People have no idea. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I don't think I'm ready for an HR person. I'm like, bro, like you have no idea. And like, there's no way to convince them. And they're going to lose $200,000. And then they'll be like, shit, yeah, I should have done that. But people are on their own journey.
Such a good way to say that. Yeah, they don't listen. They're on their own journey. Like, let them go.
They are. Like, if you're above 30 people, like you need somebody in HR.
We're at 16 and we have someone in HR. I mean, they do HR / recruiting / this, but like their payroll, but like that person, I consider them HR. And then we hire a consultant that watches her.
That's what we're doing now for HR and accounting is we have a watching the watchers. So we're bringing on in accounting, it's already done. It's going to be like a monthly review of process, a monthly review of reports, like millions of dollars can go missing in a real quick hurry. I've had it happen with so many friends where like their controller or their AP person or somebody makes a fake vendor and suddenly you have millions of dollars gone in a year. So we're looking to avoid that.
Not to mention, like if you're in California, as someone who used to live in California and a lot of other states, like employment law is so like absolutely mind-numbing, and there's so many rules and regulations that you have to follow to the T and track. And like if you change someone's time card, you better have their signature changing their time card and why and where, and like in ink and all this kind of absolutely, I mean, that's not that wild, but there is a lot of wild rules, and to a point where like it is absolutely, you need to have HR and you need to have somebody who knows what they're talking about. Because the fines on the backside and like the back pay, it's business destroying.
People don't understand, like you don't know what you are personally liable for. And there's a book that really like shook me up on this. It's by Jeff Sands, and it's like the business of turnaround or something like that. Like payroll taxes is a great example, or 401k contributions is a great example. Like if you don't pay those, you are personally liable. You will go to prison. They will take your home. Like it is not, there's no some like personal guarantee with the SBA. Like, no, you are just frankly personally liable. And it is like business shutdown bullshit. And with 401k, it's kind of the same thing. Anybody that touches the 401k program, it could be your bookkeeper, it could be you, it could be one ops manager. They are personally liable if they touch that plan for the contributions of your employees. Personally liable.
Yeah. It's
They
other
will
people's
go
money.
to prison.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it makes sense to some extent, like
does.
from a logical level.
It makes total sense, but people have no idea what they're exposed to. So
Yeah.
you read these books and it's like, no one meant to do this stuff, right?
Mhm.
So like I have a friend whose controller stole or like misallocated $4 million 2 years ago. And yeah, nearly business destroying. They got out of it, but it was a crazy story.
Mhm.
They didn't pay payroll tax for a year. They didn't pay 401k contributions. And like, I don't know how, like it was an army of attorneys, just absolute army of attorneys. Houses were on the line. It was like a real deal, but it was never on purpose, right? It was just this, I got to make payroll, so I won't pay this part, or I'm going to hold this back so I can pay this vendor and keep things going. And it just turned into this snowball where they have $1 million of employment-based liability that they are personally liable for, and they didn't even know that they were personally liable for it.
So the answer here, don't do a 401k program for your, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Avoid altogether.
I think you should explain to anybody that is touching your 401k, because our HR people actually didn't know that. Like our first HR person, they had no idea that they were personally liable because they were helping administer the plan. Like it's a very real and tangible personal risk.
That one reminds me of too, like the people who do the sweepstakes, they give away something for free. The amount of law around sweepstakes in your state and in the country is absolutely wild. And you see a lot of these small businesses doing free giveaways or sweepstakes or lotteries of some sort, and just blatantly breaking the law in many cases.
Yeah.
And on the back end, like not giving out the prize or incorrectly giving out the prize. We had to, when we did ours, the explanation by our lawyer on what would happen if we didn't give out the prize that we promised to every single person was astonishing. It was business destroying fines over like a $3,000 or $4,000 unit, like just crazy stuff. And people forget, they get lazy. They couldn't get a hold of him. Like, what do you do when you don't get a hold of the winner? Like, do you have that lined out? Do you understand what the next steps are? And if you don't, and you do it wrong, absolutely business screwed.
Yeah.
Which is wild. But I know that's a little bit tangential.
Yeah. Well, I think the point is like, have a process. We're bringing on teams to review our team to make sure that our team is holding it up. So when you don't have the org, I think you were talking about like, oh, you have more people, and my backing on that is 100% I do. But even for the people that we like, I don't have a CFO, and the CFO would hold the controller accountable. So my alternative is an accounting firm. But like, even if I had a CFO, I would probably be even more rigorous, because the CFO would have even more power to indent the company, to spend our money, to like, they could do way more damage than a controller could. So I think it gets more important the bigger the responsibility you give out of how are we monitoring what we're giving access to.
No, I think that's a good point. Like, we naturally did that with the HR department just because we, like we said, don't have a full-time person. It's an outside vendor who they specialize in HR and making sure that they are coming through.
Yeah.
And we keep them on retainer. They go through the HR reports every month, make sure everything looks correctly or looks correct, is done correctly.
What does that cost for you?
It's like $100 a month. It's nothing.
Geez, that is nothing.
But I mean, we don't have a huge book.
Who's the firm?
It's not a firm. It's an individual. So they helped set up the program initially with our person, because our person, although they are in HR, they weren't like HR, like a builder. Like, you have to build the program first. So they helped consult on building the program, and then put the processes in place that we then run and follow. And then they come in on the back end and say, hey, you did this correctly. Your taxes are correct. You've allocated correctly. Great. Perfect. Good job on the month. So
Yeah, we're starting with accounting, and then HR is our next one. But we just brought on a new accounting firm. They're going to do our taxes and stuff. But something that was a really interesting challenge to me, similar to like Chris's, like, oh yeah, I always know what's going on. I'm like, oh dang. I have a good friend, Michael Girdley, and he like incubates these businesses, right? So I'm going to invest $100,000, and we're going to start this business, and like he has a software business, and
fireworks,
he had a coffee business, fireworks. Yeah, he has all these different things. But anytime a business crosses $1 million a year, he begins an annual financial review, like an audit. So he does a financial audit on every business, like more than $1 million, which to me, as like, that's a true ownership. That's a good freaking idea. Like, you're trusting people with a lot of money. That makes total sense to me. And I had never completed an audit before, and my business was like 25. And I was like, damn, like, I'm not
Did you
really,
do one?
We're prepping for our first one.
Oh my goodness. That's going to be exciting.
It's like
nerve-wracking, but exciting.
Right. Like, he's totally right. It's like, who is watching the people that you're entrusting, and like, how do you build, same as I didn't build this and I just you essentially lost $9,000, or you could have.
We lost way more than that.
That's a real economic loss. Like, that is a very real problem. So
the harder part that people don't realize too with that, sorry, just to like reiterate the point home to everybody, is if our EBITDA margins or net margins are 10%, like the amount that you have to make to recoup that is you have to sell another $90,000 worth of stuff.
100%.
Like, the losses are 10x what they actually are because of the way that the business works. So making sure that all that owed money comes in is so critically important, so that you don't have to sell another $90K to make that back.
We have the same conversation regarding collections. It's like, oh, we collected 95% last month. I'm like, okay, so that 5% was like most of the profit. Like, because our business, if we're a 10 or 15% business, that's half to 1/3 of our actual cash flow that we just accepted the fact that we didn't collect. Like, that's not okay with me. So and the problem only gets bigger because now 95% is like, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. It grows quickly as your business grows. Yeah. I mean, and that's why, I mean, you see, speaking of Hoffman, I mean, he does a lot of things really, 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 really well because he has to. And one of the things he does really well is collection and HVAC and plumbing on site.
Yeah.
Because of this, I mean, I think he realized at some point in his journey that, hey, the margins are so low that if we don't collect and we leave that in AR, it doesn't ever get paid. So let's focus on it as a company.
Yeah.
Speaking of 3Touch, he touches it right when they call in.
Yep.
Before they arrive, as they arrive on site, and then as they leave. So he's like 4 or 5 touches. Yeah. How are you going to pay today? Because it's due today.
Yeah, I think so. If I was giving input to anybody out there on like, oh, I need to create a SOP, I just had this problem, is who's going to who is going to be accountable, and who are the two parties that are going to be accountable for that SOP being completed. So you have the frontline person, which is like the day-to-day owner of this problem, but then you have their direct, and ideally that direct or a peer that is also affected by the completion of that SOP. Multiple eyes. Because every time maybe not every time, there's a few unique cases, but for the most part, if we create a SOP that starts and ends with one role, it does not exist for very long. Like, they just don't do it. You know, they get a little bit busy, they get a little bit swamped. No one's asking them about it. No one's holding them accountable. So it goes away.
And on the back end of that, start creating SOPs as you grow. Don't wait till the problem becomes a problem, because once you go back and you try to collect that $9,000, $10,000, $50,000 a month, whatever the case may be, it's much harder to collect after the fact. So run that report in your business. Figure out how to run a report similar to that in your business, because as you scale, you as the owner cannot manage all the incoming money and finishing of jobs and making sure you get paid. Like, it needs to be a CRM or a system in place. That's been one of the hardest things for me. Same with actually AP as well, right? AR and AP, both of those is you can't be the one checking every single of your 270 invoices to make sure that you didn't get double charged.
Yeah.
So system, start now when you have the time, and it's not an issue because it will become one.
Will become one, 100%. This was a good topic. So creating multi-touch point for SOPs. Who knew that this topic could be so fun?
It's so sexy.
Yeah. Like the amount of money at this point, it would be measured in the millions over the course of my career on this exact problem, like the multiples of millions.
I wouldn't be surprised if we've lost between, like I said, AR, AP on those two items, just fall through the cracks and then double pay Ferguson, hundreds of thousands. And we're not that big.
Yeah.
Like we've been in business 3 years.
It's amazing how crazy it gets.
Sweet, guys. Well, that was fun.
If you like what you heard, 5-star, wherever it is that you listen to shows. Make sure you check out YouTube. We just crossed 1,300 subs, which I think is kind of fun. And check out ownedsandoperated.com. Sub for the newsletter. We have good stuff twice a week.